Hey everybody, welcome to Torah Tuesdays at 12. Hope you're doing well. It is a sunshiny day in Buffalo. We have not had really any snow yet all season, and the sun is shining. It's a little nippy, it's a little cold, a little chilly, but the sun is shining and we're enjoying that. Hope you're all doing well. Go ahead and sign in and let us know that you're here. As we have been the past week or two, we are sharing on several different platforms today. And we are on Facebook and YouTube. And so if you're on those channels, if you can go ahead and hit the share button, that'll kind of help increase our reach and increase our audience and let people know what we are doing. Super excited to have you with us today. Great to see so many friends and partners on board and so many folks signing in. And again, because we're across three different platforms, the crowd may seem smaller in the platform that you're in, but that's because we're across the various platforms. So really grateful to our teacher who's been leading us all year through the Torah and through the scriptures from a Jewish perspective. Mark Gerson, an amazing, amazing individual whose new book, The Telling, is coming out in just after the first quarter of next year. And many of you have already contacted the office and asked about bringing the virtual book tour for The Telling to your local church. And so if you would like to do that, I see Aaron Kazmarski on. We got to get Aaron's church signed up in Ohio, and all kinds of Pastor Lynn Hill is on. If you'd like to bring the virtual book tour to your church, go ahead and email Pastor Joe Green or Dina DePasquale, and they are helping to arrange the schedule and put all of that together. Trish Miller, that might be an incredible thing for the Christians and Israel United group up in New England there, the Boston group. So that might be a great outreach for that group to enjoy together. I am super happy to have on to introduce our time today, just a great, great, great brother. Pastor Samuel Bentley is coming to us from Cleveland, Tennessee. He is a part of the Ramp ministry. Many of you know of the Ramp. It's been one of the dynamic youth and young adult ministries in our nation. Thousands and thousands. In fact, now, Samuel, you'll clarify this in a moment, but I would say tens of thousands of young people have been through their programs, attended their conferences, attended their gatherings. And I had the privilege of meeting Samuel a few years back. And this is a righteous, zealous, passionate, studious, amazing young leader in the body of Christ. And he and his wife have just relocated from Hamilton, Alabama to Cleveland, Tennessee, and they're leading an incredible ministry outreach there. Samuel, we love you much, and it's great to see you here. Talk to us a little bit about the fact that this whole question of, 5 years ago, would you have guessed that you would be studying scriptures with people from the Jewish background? And I mean, what has Israel and this interaction with the Jewish people, what has that done for you in your life? Samuel, take it away.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to share. I've been a massive fan of Bishop Robert Stearns since the early 2000s when I was introduced to his ministry through The Call. Lou Engel's ministry, The Call, in New York, and became just he had such a deep and profound impact on my life then. And then in 2017, I get the message from Pastor Rusty Nelson in Huntsville, Alabama, to go to Israel, all expenses paid. And I'm like, absolutely. Not because of my love for Israel, but it was like, I get a 2-week vacation in Israel. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to restep the steps of Jesus and all that stuff. Unknown to me, the profound impact that it would have on my life. And I believe that one of the major keys was who I went with. And that was Bishop Stearns. I mean, there's nobody greater than to go with than Bishop Stearns. And he just unlocks so many different things, not just historical, not just from the times of Jesus, but all the way back to our patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and even beyond that. And then brings, Jewish history, Christian history, and then current Israeli history all together to just blow your mind at the revelation that God has very much existed and still exists and will always exist. So I'm so thankful. Yeah, the impact on my own life, it's hard to measure, but I have since been back only 3 times. My last trip got canceled due to this crazy virus that we're in right now. Actually, my last 2 trips got canceled. I was supposed to be back in May of 2020 and then again in November of 2020. But I am itching to return to my motherland, the land that God loves, the land that God says that this is my home forever. So I'm, but I'll tell you about just real briefly the impact that it had on my life. And I'm obviously a follower of Jesus, a Christian, and my love for the word, my love for the Jewish people, and my love for the land has exploded. I would say, because I'm from Alabama, from a rural city in Alabama, had a very small world. I didn't rub elbows with many Jews. There's not many Jews from Hamilton. Hamilton's a city of 6,000 people. And anyways, I've through people like Martin Gerson, through Aviad, through other Jewish leaders that I've met, through other rabbis that I've met, have a deep and profound love and appreciation for their commitment, their discipline, their study of the Word. So I'm forever grateful. I feel forever indebted to Bishop Stearns, to Eagle's Wings, to the whole Jewish community, those who are passionately and zealously following the Lord.
Yeah. Well, Samuel, it is awesome, and it's been so fulfilling and gratifying to see this unfold in your life. And I know it's impacted your children. I mean, I just know the power of Shabbat and the power of understanding the biblical holidays. I mean, all of that just comes alive in a way that, you really cannot imagine. So I want you to get to know Pastor Samuel Bentley. Testimonies like this are incredibly encouraging because change really does happen one friendship at a time, one conversation at a time. Each person has a sphere of influence that impacts their sphere of influence, etc. And we are living in a moment where, by God's grace and by a lot of people's hard work and support, thank God we have hundreds and hundreds of examples like Samuel Bentley of young Christians, not only in America, but Brazil and around the world. Just this week, all of Eagle's Wings material, not all, but our introductory material was just released in Japanese. There was a Japanese website launched. We had a church in Japan. I don't remember the city. Pastor Joe might know the city that they're in, but they're a church in Japan. They've been following us for a long time. They said, they said the message of Israel does not exist in the Japanese Christian church. We want to help bring this message to the Japanese believers. So they've translated everything into Japanese for us. It's awesome. It's a moment where God is doing this all around the world. And Mark Gerson, God's doing it in part because the Jewish people have been faithful to keep the Torah and to keep studying the Word of God. I would say 2 things. Number 1 is the Jewish people's love and study of Torah. And number 2, the keeping of Shabbat. These have been major influences that have helped to keep and steer the Jewish people over the centuries. So we're going to call an audible today. We're gonna make a change because we said that we were going to be here and look into the life of Esther, but we realized, we should do that during Purim. What we should be looking into today is the story of Hanukkah. And so we're going to just take a quick turn right now. You never know what you're going to get on Torah Tuesdays. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to study the message, the incredible miracle of Hanukkah. So Samuel Bentley, thank you. And with that, we're going to pass it off to Mark Gerson to lead us through the Festival of Lights, which begins the day after tomorrow. Mark Gerson.
That's right. That's right. So, Bishop, thank you. And of all the many wonderful and incredible people that I've met through you, I've been introduced by you. One of the many, was a guest on the Rabbi's husband, Pat Boone.
That's right.
Love Letters in the Sand, everyone knows. And so Pat is probably the original modern Christian Zionist. Yeah. And so there's a podcast on the Rabbi's husband with Pat. And I say this because Samuel was just saying a moment ago that he has recently moved to Cleveland, Tennessee, so Samuel's speaking to us from Cleveland, Tennessee, which I don't think he knew, but it's embedded with rock and roll history. And that when Pat was 21 in 1955, a young man opened for him in his first rock and roll concert. And that was Elvis Presley. And one of the great mysteries of rock and roll is there a video of that performance of Elvis and Pat in Cleveland, Tennessee in 1955 at Brooklyn High School? I don't know if Brooklyn High School is still there. In Cleveland, Tennessee in 1955. Is there a video? If anyone has a video, it's of great value to rock and roll fans everywhere, but none have been found.
Mark, you need to make a pilgrimage and go stand on the grounds of Brooklyn High School, wherever it is.
Well, we made the pilgrimage to Graceland with you.
We did. Our families went, and we toured Graceland together. Mark is somewhat of an expert in all things Elvis, and we went to Graceland. And lo and behold, who knew that Elvis is Jewish? Who knew this? Elvis's mother was Jewish, which halakhically makes him Jewish. And we went to his mother's gravestone, and on his mother's grave there is a Star of David, a Magen David. And I'm telling you what, the story never ends. But now, yeah. Mark, why don't you make the natural segue from Elvis to the Maccabees? All right, there's a natural segue.
The natural segue is there's some good Hanukkah music, but none as good as Elvis's.
There you
go. So Hanukkah, as Bishop said, is starting on Thursday night, and so we're just going to kind of go through what Hanukkah really means, and what is historical, and more importantly, its continuing moral significance is. So Hanukkah was a holiday that commemorating an event that happened in either 165, 166, 167 BC. No one knows the exact date; it doesn't matter. And what was happening at the time is the Greeks had taken over basically the whole, what we would now call the Middle East. So the Greeks have the whole Middle East, and of course they take over Jerusalem, which was Jewish, and they intend on Hellenizing Jerusalem, making Jerusalem entirely Greek, full of Hellenic culture. And if they succeed, Judaism is gone, Jews are gone, the Torah is gone, before they really had a chance to get started. And their chances look very good, because the Greek culture was very alluring. It was perhaps, for its time, compared to any other time, the most sophisticated culture in the history of humankind. In terms of Greek art, architecture, music, philosophy, there was a tremendous amount to recommend for Greek culture. And maybe in terms of number of people, it may never have been rivaled. It may be, it's right up there in the top tier throughout all of human history. So as talented and alluring it was, lots of people wanted to join the Greek culture. So and it was succeeding. They were Hellenizing a lot of Jews. A lot of Jews were basically either converting from Judaism, officially or not, and becoming Greek. And so what the Greeks did was they went into the holy temple in Jerusalem, the temple that had been ordained in the Torah. They went into the temple. They put a statue of Zeus. They had sacrifices to pigs. They outlawed circumcision. They did everything imaginable that was both anti-Jewish, and then plenty of things that were unimaginable. There aren't any records of mass atrocities in terms of that. But in terms of eliminating Jewish practice, they did everything they could do in terms of eliminating Jewish practice. Again, not persecution at that point, but eliminating all Jewish practice, to eliminate Judaism, to make the Jews, they didn't want to get rid of all, they didn't want to kill the Jews, they wanted to make them all Greek. And so outlawed everything Jewish. I'm sure there was some violence along the way, but the main story is they wanted to make everything Jewish, including, perhaps especially, inside of the Holy Temple. So Judaism's about to be finished. Judaism's finished. None of us are here. This is 167 BC. So what happened was this very small band of rebels, led by Judah Maccabee, who was the father of a small group of sons. This family decided they had enough, and this small family decided they had enough of the greatest empire in the world. So who's going to win? The family of the Maccabees versus the greatest empire in the world. So one of the Maccabees kills a deeply Hellenized Jew who was trying to get all the other Jews to give up their Judaism and to become Greek. And that sparks both a civil war and a world war. In that it's the Hellenized Jews and the Greeks versus this small band of Jews. So who wins the war? The small band of Jews win the war. It was a military miracle. Probably the next Jewish military victory that was on par was either 48 or 67. So it was a great Jewish miracle. And in fact, the Maccabees are heroes to the Jewish state of Israel today because it was this tiny people who defeated this great empire and in so doing saved Judaism. So what happens? They go. This is where Hanukkah comes in. They go back into the temple that had been completely devastated by the Greeks. I mean, paganism, anti-Jewish stuff all over their temple. And then this is what it says happens in the Talmud. It says the following. There are a couple of important things that lead to the holiday. It says the following year they established that this would be a holiday. They made this into a holiday. That this would be a holiday. Okay, so the first question is, why did they do it in the following year? Why did they establish it in the following year? Okay, so in conjunction with that, they found, this also is very Hanukkah, they found a vial of oil from when the Jews last had the temple years and years before, and they burn the oil, and the oil lasts not for 1 day, but for 8 days. So they have a vial of oil that they found that lasts for 1 day, not for 8 days, which is the key to Hanukkah, and they established the holiday the following year. So what else in the Bible, anyone, let's see if you can guess this, what else in the Bible burns when all accounts are that it burns, but it does not get consumed?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So what burns but does not get consumed? So this candle is burning and burning for 8 days, does not get consumed. This is an obvious biblical resonance to Moses and the burning bush. Something that burns for 8 days and does not get consumed. Which leads us into the first question. We're going to basically go through 15 questions of Hanukkah. The first question of Hanukkah, why would it say they established the holiday the following year? I mean, you have a miracle, you want to establish a holiday, do it now. Why wait a year? And the teaching is, this is how we identify miracles, or how we often identify miracles. How does Moses identify the miracle of the burning bush? Is because he noticed. Lots of other bushes in the desert burned, and Moses could have kept walking by, seeing the bush that was burning and not noticed anything different. But Moses commits the sacred act of noticing, and he notices something different. He stops, and he notices, this is in the Exodus text, he notices that the bush is not being consumed. And so it took time to realize that he was in the presence of a miracle. If he just walked by and saw a burning bush, he would have missed the miracle. But he took time, and he noticed, and he identified the miracle. So it says the following year the miracle is established, teaching us that it often takes time to appreciate a miracle. And we see this all the time in our lives. I mean, you know, we're going to study, God willing, in the book of Genesis, Joseph, who is sent out into a field, and an angel/man sees him and directs him to his brothers. Is that an angel or a man? Who knows? But how might a miracle happen in our lives? Maybe we're having a down period of our lives or a bad day, and someone comes and gives us a word of encouragement that sets us on the path that at some point in the future we realize is the path we needed. Maybe Bishop Stearns, who's introduced me and so many others to so many wonderful people, introduces me to somebody or anyone to somebody, and that person becomes, as they have, completely transformative to their lives. Samuel just talked about that. That's a miracle, right? But do you know it in the moment when you get the call that says you should go to Israel? Did Samuel know it in that moment? Did Samuel say in that moment, I think I just had a miracle? No, right? No. But so Samuel, when did it hit you? Like you just spoke beautifully about being the recipient of a miracle, but it didn't hit you when the phone rang, I'm sure.
No, it hit me on January the 22nd, 2017, when I came out of the Jordan River.
That's right. Yeah. So and this is teaching us how we can appreciate miracles, is that things might happen all the time in our lives that are miracles, and they will reveal themselves to be miracles at some point in the future. How long in the future? Who knows? But at some point in the future, whatever's happening right now, not everything, of course, but something happening right now very well may reveal itself to be a miracle, and that this is what we're being taught by the Maccabees, the authors of the Talmud who commented on the Maccabees. The following year, they established a miracle. It took a year to realize that they were in the presence of a miracle. Okay, so what's a miracle? So we have a candle. We have oil. We have oil, and the oil burns. The oil is supposed to burn for 1 day. It burns for 8 days. Now, is that the miracle? Well, every Jewish grandmother, and maybe every Christian grandmother, certainly every Jew, maybe every Christian has a grandmother who could make 1 day of oil last for 8 days. Okay? So is that the miracle? That oil lasted longer than someone anticipated? Maybe, but is it? Okay, maybe. Maybe it's a miracle. A, how consequential is it? The fact that the oil lasted for 8 days rather than 1, not very consequential in history. And then let's compare it to other real miracles in the Bible. Let's compare it to God liberating us from slavery and freedom, and in world the concept of freedom. There's a miracle. God giving us the Torah at Mount Sinai. There's a miracle. Oil that's supposed to last for 1 day lasts for 8. Does not rate. Does not compare. So that's said to be the miracle, but actually it can't be the miracle, inviting us to try to figure out what is the miracle. So there are lots of different ideas about what the actual miracle is. And I think the best idea is that starting on Thursday night of this year, Jewish homes all over the world will be celebrating Hanukkah. I mean, what are the odds that there would be Jews celebrating this event as Jews, relearning the miracle of Hanukkah so many thousands of years later? That's the miracle, is that we're still here, we're still living. But there are lots of other potential miracles that are much greater than the 8 days, but that is probably the best, that we're all here living as Jews celebrating Hanukkah so many thousands of years later, after we were so nearly extinguished that time and so many times subsequently. So there's a miracle. So the famous symbol of Hanukkah and of the miracle is, of course, the menorah. And the first menorah was ordained where? It was ordained in the Bible, to be in the tabernacle. So the menorah has been a sacred symbol of Judaism since the Bible, and today the emblem of the modern state of Israel is the menorah. So every single thing that the founders of the state of Israel could have picked to be emblematic of the state, what did they pick? They picked the menorah, which is what we're all going to light on Thursday night for 8 days. 8 days being the candles for 8 days subsequently. So what's the significance? So what does the menorah symbolize? The menorah could symbolize a lot of things, but what it best symbolizes was understood and perfectly captured by the father of Rabbi Hugo Gryn, who became a great British rabbi in the 20th century, and I believe he died in 1996. And he was in Auschwitz as a boy. I think he was around 15 or so, probably for a couple of years. And his father came to him, and his father said, "We have a little bit of margarine that they had gotten somehow." And his father said to him, "We're going to take the margarine, and we're going to use the margarine to make Hanukkah candles." And the young boy in Auschwitz said to his father, he said, we're starving here. Why are we using Hanukkah? Why are we using the precious margarine, the small amount of margarine we have, to make Hanukkah candles? And his father said to him, what we've learned here is we can go 3 weeks without food, we can go 3 days without water, but we can't go 3 hours without hope. And that exactly captures why the menorah is the symbol of the Jewish state, and what it means for Hanukkah is that the menorah is the great symbol of Jewish hope. So when we see menorahs, the one word we have to associate is with hope.
Mark, can I interject here for a moment and just ask you to explain? And that is beautiful, the symbolism and the depth of the menorah being hope. But something I don't understand, and I've been around this a while. They found the vial of oil. It was the sacred oil that had been blessed, which is why they couldn't just go out and get a jar of oil, down at 7-Eleven and use it. You know, it was going to take time to create the next vat of oil properly, as I understand it. But my question is, they were lighting the menorah in the temple, correct?
Right.
So, because
right.
why, then how or why, at what point, because isn't there a difference between a menorah and a Hanukkah? And doesn't the Hanukkah have an extra branch or two? Or
am I, 2 extra branches.
So if you could, if you could explain that, if they were just doing the regular menorah, how and why did they then create a Hanukkah? That's always confused me a little bit.
Well, the Hanukkah is like a menorah with 2 extra branches, which is really just for the eight rather than 6, but it's exactly the same structure, just 2 extra branches. But so the Hanukkah is a kind of menorah, but it's exactly the same thing, just with one more place for the candle on each side. But it really, but you're absolutely right. So they find it and they lit it, which actually leads into another great question of Hanukkah. Why do we celebrate 8 days? Let's say one says that the 8 days of oil is a miracle. It's a miracle that oil lasted for 8 days. Okay, it's not a miracle it lasted for 1 day, right? So then it should be a 7-day holiday. Because you found the vial of oil, one could safely presume, as everybody did, that the vial would be good for the first day. So why don't we just have a 7-day holiday? Why don't we have an 8-day holiday? Why is it considered there are 8 days of miracles rather than 7? Because everyone agreed the oil should have lasted for 1 day. So why is it considered a miracle that it lasted for 1 day? And again, there's no right or wrong answer. One of the great things about Hanukkah is it really encourages us to think about miracles. And I think the best answer here, I think this was provided by our mutual friend Rabbi David Wolpe, is so what's the miracle of the first day? The miracle of the first day is that there was some anonymous person, as the temple was being taken over and destroyed by the Greeks, who took that one vial of oil and hid it. And why did that person hide that vial of oil? Because as the greatest empire in the world was taking over the Jewish Holy Temple, this person had the hope and the faith that at some point in the future, we would reclaim the temple. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, we did. So it was the hope of this one anonymous person whose name we will never know, who hid this vial of oil somewhere, that someday somebody will find it and they will rekindle the menorah and reignite the Jewish people. That's the miracle, is that someone did that and then someone else found it, that this combination happened. So that could be the miracle of the first day. It certainly explains why we celebrate 8 miracles rather than 1. We certainly need an explanation, because the first day should not be a miracle by common standards. Okay, so we have this menorah with 8 branches and then a thing in the middle, which is higher than all the others, and that's for the shamash. So what's this shamash? This is very important. So the shamash means servant. The shamash is the servant candle, and we light this shamash so that it lights all the other candles. Okay, so this really articulates what it means to be a Jewish leader, and it answers a previous question. How do you make one candle live forever? In other words, how do you make one candle live for 8 when it should live for 1? And the answer is, if that candle lights others. So a candle can live forever to the extent it lights others. So he who lights everyone else can have his light ignited forever. So, and this also really explains why education is such a crucial Jewish value, because most things in life, if we had it and we give some of it to somebody else, we have less of it, right? Any physical thing, actually. If you have 3, I'm looking at a pack of gum. If I have 4 pieces of gum there and I give 1 to somebody else, now I have less gum, okay? But how does it work with knowledge? Or light? It's the exact same property. It's very rare. But if you share your knowledge with somebody, you don't have less knowledge. You actually have more knowledge because you learn from that person. If you don't learn from that person, you don't have less knowledge. That person now has more. So it's the act of sharing is an act of increase. It's the same thing with the light. If you take the shamash candle in the middle of that menorah and you light other lights, does the shamash candle have less light? No. Light has the same property, that you can take one light and light another light and increase light all around the room, all around the world, without any diminution to the first light. So that's what we're learning about the role of the leader, is that the role of the leader does not diminish himself, quite the opposite. What he does is he ignites others, and in so doing, brightens up the whole room. So that's the role of leaders. He who lights everybody else, because light, when a light lights other lights, it doesn't diminish. The amount of light increases. Same thing with education. When we teach our children, we don't suddenly lose the knowledge we share with them. They gain the knowledge at no cost to anybody. So it's one of the great things in kind of the global, broadly defined economy is that we can give up something and we don't lose it. Most times when we give something, we lose it. Here we give up something, we don't lose it. So it's a great principle. The shamash is the servant candle. Now the shamash candle is exactly the same as every other candle. It's elevated above the others, but it's the same candle. So the leader is the same as everybody else. Yes, he or she has a position that is higher than everybody else, literally on the menorah, but he is the same. And the goal of the leader is to light everybody else around him, to light that light. Now, getting back to the question of why are there 8 days instead of 7 days? So we talked about how the temple had been ransacked completely. Now, there's this great story that really illustrates probably the miracle of finding, of the hiding and the finding of the first candle, with profound implications to this day, which is that there was a great rabbi in Eastern Europe at some point, and his very young son came to him, probably as each of our young children come to us at some point, crying, and he says to his child, "Why are you crying?" And his child said, "Well, I was playing hide and go seek, but they couldn't find me." So the father says to the son, "Well, that's great. You won the game. You hid so well they couldn't find you." And the son said, "No, they stopped searching." So the rabbi breaks down at this point, and who knows if he literally did, but he breaks down. He prays to God, and he said, "This is the whole problem." He said, "You have done such a good job hiding yourself in the world that so many people have stopped searching." Right. So the analogy to Hanukkah that he was making here is that somebody hid the candle, or hid the oil, which we don't use to light the candle. Someone hides the oil, and then we never stopped searching. We came back and we kept searching. So the challenge today is that, and so many people have this challenge, is that God, as Rabbi was saying, to God, you hid yourself so well in this world that you enable people to stop searching. And that was the analogy that he saw with the sun. Now, another very interesting thing is the temple was dedicated long time before it was destroyed. It was dedicated, so it was destroyed in 167. It was dedicated long time before that. But what we celebrate, so why don't we celebrate the dedication? Why don't we identify the date or make up the date when it was dedicated and celebrate that? Be easy enough to do. But we don't. We celebrate the rededication of the temple. So Hanukkah means dedication, but we don't celebrate the dedication. We celebrate the rededication. So why do we celebrate a rededication rather than a dedication? Now, Christians have this great concept of being born again, right? This basically gets to the point: is that rebirth is actually more important in a lot of respects than birth, because what happens to a lot of things shortly after they're created is that we get bored of them, right? And then they lose all their power. This is the reason why many people lose their vision. It's the reason why many campaigns dissipate. It's the reason why many marriages end or are on their way to ending or are effectively ending. It's because on the wedding day, everyone's so excited, the bride and the groom are so passionate, and then life sets in and pretty soon it dissipates. So this is why we celebrate rededication, because it's the renewal of our vows, so to speak, the renewal of the dedication of the temple. It's rededication that is worthy of celebration, which is why on Pesach it said that the Bible tells us to tell the story, but in Pesach we don't tell the story. It says we retell and we relive the story, because we're basically giving it new birth. We're giving it new life. So that's what the Hanukkah is teaching us we should do with something that's precious. Don't celebrate the dedication of the temple. Celebrate the rededication of the temple. So when can the temple be rededicated? As often as we want it to be. There's no limits on the amount of times that we can rededicate ourselves to something. And celebrate that rededication rather than the original dedication, whose meaning, whose passion may have long dissipated. So what we're doing on Hanukkah is we're not celebrating the dedication, but we're celebrating the rededication of the temple. I mean, think about it when a country was founded. When Israel was founded in 1948, the excitement on the streets, and one of the great things that a proper Independence Day does is it rededicates the state. Is what should Independence Day be? It should be the people coming together and rededicating themselves to the principles of the state. That happens in Israel now. But it's the rededication that's worthy of Jewish celebration, and that's what we celebrate. Now, what is the kind of the so we have a Hanukkah, we have all kinds of stuff with Hanukkah. We have Menorah, which is by far the most important thing. And then the question is, well, there are so many questions with Menorah, but how do we light the Menorah? And one rabbi asked the question, why do we Jews have to argue about everything? And he was referring to this. Yeah, and the argument is, so you have 8 places on the Menorah, 8 places for candles on the Menorah. The question is, do you light, on the first day, do you light all 8 at once? And then on the second day, light 7? Or do you light 1 and progress to 8? And this was an ancient debate between 2 of the greatest rabbis of all time, Shammai and Hillel. And Shammai said you light 8 and then get to 1, symbolizing the fullness of the holiday at its beginning. And Hillel said, no, you light 1 and you go to 8. Now we today, and forever, side with Rabbi Hillel for the reason that we always want to grow in mitzvot. So if you have a good deed, you always want to do more good deeds. You never want to symbolically or certainly actually do fewer good deeds. So if lighting a candle is one good deed, then tomorrow I want to do more. So the whole point is you do one, and then you're so excited, inspired, and gratified by it that you want to do more. So that's why we go from 1 candle rather than 8. Now there's also some, this also really resonates with a lot of modern psychology, because there are really 2 schools of thought with psychology. So the patient goes to the psychologist or the therapist or the rabbi or the pastor and says, I have so much I need to work through in so common. Would the 8 theory say? The 8 theory would say, let's plunge into all of your emotions, into all of your past, let's analyze everything, let's dissect everything, and then let's reconstruct you. That's the 8. Let's figure out everything we can about you, and then we'll reconstruct you. The opposite theory is the theory that Viktor Frankl really pioneered. He was the great survivor, one of the great survivors of the Holocaust, and he came out of Auschwitz and wrote what I think is the greatest book of the 20th century, which is Man's Search for Meaning. And he said the opposite. He said, let's find meaning. And how do you do that? You could light 1 candle a day. So, and then escalate in meaning. So rather than dissecting everything, just find something positive and dedicate yourself to that, and then find something else positive and dedicate yourself to that. So gradually, by this creation of light, you'll get rid of the darkness. It will not happen overnight, but it will happen. But it won't happen overnight. So if you want to replace something bad, what he's saying is don't analyze the bad. You're never going to figure it out anyway. Don't analyze the bad. Instead, just create something good, and gradually you'll have this process of progressing in mitzvot, and you'll replace the bad with the good. Okay, so we also have, we're going to talk about them both. We also have, so we have the menorah, which is most important. We also have a symbolic toy, and of course, being Jewish, because Judaism really believes that you are what you eat. We have symbolic food. It's absolutely. I mean, that's why the Jewish foods are of massive significance, symbolically and otherwise, and they all speak to the meaning of the event and the holiday. So the toy is the dreidel. It's the thing you spin. You could, I'm sure, there are dreidel spinning contests online. You spin it, and the kids have a lot of fun with it, and they have little bets with it about which will it land on, because there are basically 4 places it can land. It can land the gimel, the shim, the hay, or the nun, and these all symbolize 4 different things. The gimel symbolizes gift, which means body. The shin symbolizes seichel, which is knowledge. The hay, hakol, which is everything, meaning like success, worldly possessions, and the nun is the soul. And the point is, they are all parts of our story. So it's not like any one is more important than the other. We don't want to purge ourselves of the desire for worldly success with the hay in order to get to the nefesh, the soul. No, they're all parts of the same dreidel. We play with it all, and we celebrate it all, and we prize it all, and they all live together in harmony. There's no notion that the soul is better than the body at all. It's like we have to understand each in its proper place, and each does have a proper place.
Which, Mark, if I can just interject briefly, is really important, hearkening back to what you talked earlier about the Greeks and the culture of the day, because, of course, Gnosticism was really, really present in a lot of thought there. And the early Christian church dealt with this. The early Christian church dealt with a lot of error, teaching that the body was evil and only the spirit was good. So there was a lot of this concept around, the Apostle Paul is dealing with a lot of this in his writings. So this concept of the integrated self, as referenced by the dreidel, is really, really important. I want to just take a moment while we're here for a second and just real quick let everybody know December 10th coming up here in, somebody let me know, December 10th, 7 p.m. We're going to be going live, all of our partners. This is a partners only event. So if you're not yet a partner, please sign up quickly and become a partner before Thursday night. We're going to be going live and in Jerusalem, and we're going to begin lighting the Hanukkah with our Eagles Wings family in Jerusalem. So they'll be beaming in from Jerusalem. It's going to be a family-only event, partners-only event. It's going to be awesome. So spread the word and let folks know about that. This Thursday night, 7 p.m., the Eagles Wings family worldwide will be celebrating Hanukkah together, and they'll be lighting the Hanukkah. Our special family from Jerusalem. I'm not going to let you know who they are because we're going to keep that a secret. But Mark, I want to ask you to do something just because this is so familiar to you, but a lot of us are writing furiously. Just take 60 seconds and go through one more time. There's the gimel, the hey, the nun. Go through each and give us the word. I'm just a tiny bit slower because we want to get that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So the gimel is gift for body. The shin is seichel, which is knowledge. Hey is hakol, which is everything, really worldly success. Someone who wants everything, and which is totally fine. That's exactly your point and my point. And the nun is nefesh, which is the soul. And I think your point about integrated is so important. And if we think about it, integrated is the same word as integrity.
Right.
So what does it mean to have integrity? It means to have an integrated life where everything coheres together. And you're absolutely. I mean, in Jewish teaching it says, what should one do with lust? Have a lot of kids. Don't get rid of it. Have a lot of kids. So you take it and you channel it and you do great things with it. You don't get rid of it. If we got rid of the Jewish teaching, got rid of lust, I mean, how horrible! We'd have no more kids. World would end, literally. You don't get rid of lust. So that's one toy. Now, there's the tradition of gift giving. I think that largely derives from American Jews and American Christians in the 1950s. But we do have a tradition of giving Hanukkah Gelt, and Gelt is money. Okay, so why would we give money? Particularly, interestingly, because the root of the word Hanukkah, Hanuk, is education. So on the night, every time a Jew can celebrate education, it seems like every Jewish event does. So why are we giving money on this night when we're supposed to be, like every other night, pretty much, educating our children? And I think the answer probably is in the gematria. Gematria is in Hebrew, every letter corresponds to a number, and then when you add them up and you see if two words have the same number, they have a profound connection. And the gematria for money is the same as the gematria for ladder. So what would money and a ladder have in common? And the Jewish answer is that with money, you can do great things or you can do terrible things. Just like a ladder, you can go way up or you can go way down. So money in this sense represents potential. So somebody who has money, you can spend it in any number of ways. Money represents potential because you can spend it for good or you can spend it for ill. It is neither good nor ill on its own. All it is potential, which can be elevated, degraded, wasted, or ignored. So when we give Hanukkah Gelt, what we're emphasizing is we're saying, acknowledge your potential. And this is the whole Jewish principle behind education, is that what we say is we want to educate, we want to acknowledge our child and say, you have so much potential, and we're going to direct that potential to the good through education. That's the point of education. And that's why we give out Hanukkah Gelt, because money really symbolizes potential, just like a ladder does. Just like a ladder, you can go up or you can go down. If you look at a ladder, you say, is someone going up or going down? If you say there's a ladder a mile away, is someone going up or going down? The answer is I have no idea. I have to see. So therefore, money and ladder, really the same concept. We can go up or we can go down, and that's why we give Hanukkah Gelt. Now, very importantly, everyone who lives in a Jewish community on Thursday night is going to see a lot of menorahs all over the place. If you live in a Jewish community, you're not necessarily going to see lots of Shabbat candles on Friday night. You're not going to see lots of apples and honey on Rosh Hashanah. You're not going to see Seder, well, you might see Seder place. You should go to a Seder. So put that one aside. But the point is, this is the Jewish holiday where we instructed to, quote, either advertise or publicize, the same word. We're supposed to advertise the miracle. So it's commanded that we advertise the miracle. So in ancient times, this was done on doorsteps. When Jews moved to environments that got a little colder and a little less hospitable in every way, we did it in windows. So depending on where one lives, if one lives in a warm weather place, you might see them on doorsteps. Otherwise, the Jew is commanded to place the menorah in the most publicly visible kind of space. And one of the many tremendous contributions of the great late Rebbe Menachem Gerson was he inaugurated really in the 70s on this great campaign for public menorahs, huge public menorahs. So it's all because of the Rebbe in the 70s. And he said, America's ready for it, let's do it. So there are big menorahs alongside Christmas trees everywhere because of the great Rebbe. But why was he doing it? It wasn't his idea. He was saying this is how we have to advertise the miracle. So why do we have to advertise the miracle? So there are several different reasons. Again, like everything else, there's not one reason. Several different. One is, and these are really the Rebbe's explanations. One is that too many Jews have assimilated and become disconnected from their Judaism and are not coming to Hanukkah. Therefore, let's bring Hanukkah to them. So wherever a Jew is, we're going to bring Hanukkah to you. We're going to advertise the miracle. Two, we live in a time, now this is very interesting. I think it's deeply profound and it really speaks to the group that we're all with right this moment, is we live in a time when most Gentiles deeply respect Jews who respect our Judaism. Mm-hmm. Which is, so the more Jewish, the more we respect our Judaism, the more we study the Torah, the more we live Jewish values, the better, the deeper the relationships it is to form with our Gentile friends. And this is absolutely true. And the Rebbe noticed it early. So he said, so some other people would say, well, if we put menorahs all over the place, will that create anti-Semitism? He said it will do the exact opposite. He said if we establish that we are proud to be public Jews, now we're advertising the miracle, we're going to make more friends. And we did. And it's true. Number three, it's just, and this is probably the plain mention, it's an expression of Jewish pride. Like, why would you put something in your window? Why do parents put our kids' trophies wherever we put them and post stuff on Facebook? You know, it's because we're proud of our kids, right? So if you're proud of something, you want to share it. And so we should be proud of our Judaism. So we advertise a miracle. We share the menorah. And particularly because menorah is a symbol of Jewish health. And the other explanation the Rebbe gave was that it inspires the non-Jewish world to cast their own spiritual light. And to think about and to remember in Judaism always lead to action, what God wants from them, non-Jews, to make the world a better place and a brighter place. So just as though we're sharing our light through the Hanukkah, the idea is that others will say, well, what's my light? And how can I share that? So that's why we'll see lots of different public menorahs, which should never only be in private. Now, let's get to what we eat. We are what we eat. This is very important to Judaism, is that the laws of kosher, so many people have tried to explain the laws of kosher. They can't be explained by health. It doesn't work. They can't be. The only thing that works is kind of, and we've gone into this before, we'll go into it again, but the deep symbolism of the laws of kosher about who we want to be is reflected in what we can eat and what we cannot eat. So, and it's the same thing here. So what do we eat on Hanukkah? It's all about oil. Thank God it only lasts for 8 days, or else we would have a huge health problem as a Jewish people, because it's not good for you. But it's all of that. But everything we eat from these thick donut-like things, it's all about oil. And so okay, so why is, and obviously oil is not Hanukkah's not a health manual. So why are we? So what? But for 8 days it's okay, I guess. So why are we? Particularly because the kids love it, which also is another great purpose. This is a holiday that the kids should learn to love. So why is Hanukkah all about oil? So in other words, what about oil? If we go by the premise that we are what we eat, why do we want to eat oil? So a few properties to oil that we might want to think about when contemplating who do we want to become when the entire 8 days we're putting oil into ourselves. One is that how do you get oil? You have to crush and beat the olive, right? Teaching us what? That life will humble you, right? In order to get the oil, there has to be some act of humility. So we have to get crushed. So life will humble you through the oil. The other property of oil And everyone who's cooked or even hasn't cooked, everyone who's put Purell in their hands has this experience. Oil penetrates solid substances deeply, right? If we put oil on our hands right now, it goes in deeply, right? You know, oil's on your face. I don't use that, but yeah. Oil goes into solid substances with remarkable depth. And so what's the teaching here is that we should think of other people. So why are we imbibing oil? Because it's saying, let people be oil. In other words, let people into our lives in the same way that we're letting oil into our lives this Hanukkah. So let people into our lives with that depth, just like oil penetrates the solid substance that is us physically so deeply, it's so hard to get off when you get it on. Let people into our lives. That's how we should relate to others. Let them into us with our depth. So often, so many people put up barriers. What this is teaching us is let people into our lives with depth. The third property of oil, which is interesting in conjunction with the second, is oil does not mix with other liquids. Well, the expression oil and water don't mix, doesn't mix with other liquids. So what it's saying is never lose your identity. So just like oil never loses its identity, no matter what we do with oil, it never loses its identity. Does you put it with other liquids, it can coexist, but never loses its identity. So what this is teaching us is never lose your own identity. If the world tries to make you like everybody else, resist it. Be like oil. Be yourself in a world where what might otherwise happen is you just kind of go into the fabric of things. No. Don't mix. It's just like oil doesn't mix with liquids. Maintain one's identity, particularly in a world where it's not so easy to do. And the other thing, of course, rises. It's the top. About what we should do, of course, and how we should always seek to rise to the top. Now, getting back to Menorah for a moment. So the Menorah, which everyone's either seen them or God willing will see it on Thursday night outside as people advertise the miracle, either in the windows of people's homes or in public squares. Every menorah has to come from one piece of gold. So no matter, it has to be, so even though it can look very intricate, and some of them are, it has to come from one piece of gold. And that's shown that even though there may be many diverse components to the menorah, and that's part of the menorah's beauty, it's all one at the end. It all comes from one piece of gold. So a kosher menorah has to be from one piece of gold. Now, another very interesting thing is when does Hanukkah exist, and particularly in light of this kind of modern flowering of Jewish Christian love. When does Hanukkah begin? Hanukkah begins in the month of Kislev. That's not so interesting. What's so interesting is it begins on the 25th of Kislev, which is our equivalent of December 25th. December. Obviously, December and Kislev don't line up perfectly because one's a solar calendar, one's a lunar calendar, but it's now. It's our December, and it's the 25th of Kislev. So that's when we rededicate the temple on the 25th of Kislev. That's Hanukkah. So the 25th of Kislev is Thursday night. Now, this is not in the Torah text, but it's in the Midrash, which is the rabbinic imagination of the Torah text, and it's always important to distinguish among the two and to say one is the imagination, which can be important, we can learn stuff from it, but the Torah text is what's deeply sacred and deeply true. But we can also learn from the imagination. So in the imagination, again, this is not the Torah text, so it may not have, probably didn't happen, certainly not true in any, but it's a very interesting thought, because what were the rabbis thinking when they conceived this in the Midrash? They said that the original temple in the Bible was also supposed to be inaugurated on the 25th of Kislev. Now, there was no months in the Bible. It just said the head of months. The names of months came later. So again, it's not in the text. But it says that the temple was supposed to have been inaugurated on the 25th of Kislev. And then God came. They're ready to inaugurate it. Then God came again, not in the text. Then God came and said, you have to hold off. You can't inaugurate the temple until the 1st of Nisan, which is when the Pesach sequence begins. So the question is, why? And then God says, but I owe you one. I owe you a big one on the 25th of Kislev. And that, of course, if one believes this, would be Hanukkah. So the question is, why would there have been the delay from the 25th of Kislev to the 1st of Nisan? And the teaching here is that God delayed to give us something. He delayed to give us a gift, and that is the gift of thirst and of yearning. Is that what God is saying to us? I know you want to inaugurate this temple on the 25th of Kislev, but I'm going to give you a greater gift. I'm going to give you the gift of yearning to inaugurate the temple, which you can't do for a while. So that is the great Jewish gift. It's the gift of yearning, which is probably why we're able to celebrate the miracle Hanukkah now, and it's certainly why Menorah is the emblem of the modern state of Israel, because the odds of there being a Jewish state in the biblical land of Israel today, given all that's happened in history, are exactly zero. But it happened anyway, making it unquestionably a miracle. And so, of course, the symbol is going to be the emblem. It's going to be the Hanukkah menorah. But we're able to do it because of the message that we always have to yearn. And Jews have always yearned, no matter where we were, no matter what country we're in, no matter what age we're in, we always yearned for Jerusalem. Always. It's in all of our prayers that we always yearn for Jerusalem. And this was the gift that we were given with the tabernacle on the supposed 25th of Kislev. It said, God says, I'm going to give you the gift of yearning. And you know what? We needed that gift. Because if we didn't have that gift of yearning, who knows if we would have always kept yearning for Jerusalem. And if we didn't keep yearning for all of Jerusalem, there would be no state of Israel today. So I think with that, we can take any questions or discussion.
Wow, a lot there to unpack. A lot of this, again, when we go through this, Mark, it just so much reminds us of Christian scriptures. There's a huge, there's a lot of teaching that Jesus does about oil. In particular, he talks about having fresh oil in our lamps, that we would be prepared spiritually, that we'd be prepared for God's coming. And so all kinds of Christian verses and stories and parables about oil that make so much more sense, kind of in the light of the Hanukkah, the Hanukkah story, which again, Mark, contextually, historically, this would have been just about 150 years, 170 years after Jesus would have been born, just about 170 years after this, correct?
Exactly.
So this would have been a relatively fresh, miracle in the minds of the Jewish people. This would not have been something reaching back into antiquity.
I think that's absolutely right. And Jesus certainly would have known that, but for this victory, there's no Jews.
Right.
I mean, but for this small band of rebels who beat the greatest empire in the world, there are no Jews. And so Jesus would have known that he was only who he was, and everyone would have known they were only who they were because of this small band of rebels. So I'm sure he knew the Hanukkah story exceedingly well. Well,
and in the Christian scripture, in the Gospels, there is record of Jesus celebrating Hanukkah. So that is part of the culture of Jesus' life. He would have celebrated Hanukkah, and so it certainly is instructive to us to do that. So that is why all of our partners are invited together on Thursday night, 7 p.m. It's a partners only call. How do they get? They'll be emailed the link. All right. Is it their regular link? Yeah. So it's your regular partners link. We'll be doing a global Zoom call on Thursday night. We'll be linking to Jerusalem, and we'll be entering into the Hanukkah season together. I want to also make sure that you remember Mark's earlier comments about the rabbishusband.com, getting in touch with his podcast, getting on all of his social media. The content on the podcast is amazing. It is as diverse a group of people as you can imagine, and they're all coming together to talk about this book and how this book illuminates them and encourages them and guides them. And Mark has done an incredible job bringing together people from all kinds of diverse backgrounds and really keeping the.
I would say thank you, but many of the people I've met through you. So.
Well. And vice versa. so folks, it is awesome. Our screen is a little smaller today, so I'm not seeing questions in particular. But Mark, I know our hour is up, and we're super grateful. I'm so glad we made the pivot from Esther to Hanukkah. This is right in keeping with the season. So, guys, when you go around, you know what we should do? Go around town. And any Hanukkahs that you see up in town, get a picture of it and send it to us, and we will do kind of a global social media post and hashtag it Torah Tuesdays. That'll be awesome. And so send us the link. We'll take the Chabad here in Buffalo at the Buffalo airport. There is a Hanukkah every year. It is probably 10 foot tall. It's huge. And right when you get off of the jetway, you see it there. Wonderful, Mark. Thank you so much. This has been awesome. I have learned about Hanukkah. It's been awesome to study together. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you Thursday night as we go live to Jerusalem. God bless.
All right. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you.